Is this the dagger?
G'day guys, JB here coming at you with a fortnightly wrap. This one from the 2nd of March through to the 15th of March 2024 for the 23-24 NBA season. A lot going on in the NBA right now, and the playoff picture genuinely starting to take shape, the end of season picture starting to take shape, and teams are genuinely moving and shaking their way throughout the conference and looking to set the tone going into the postseason. Of course, there are some general leaders and some general believers right now on both sides. I don't think that's too hard to work out. There's still a couple of movers and shakers. There's still a few teams that are looking to throw a cat amongst the pigeons, so to speak. There's certainly a couple of teams here or there that are just going to test the waters, that are certainly going to make things interesting for their opposition. Let's see who they are. So without further ado, let's get into it. My wrap to March 15, 2024 for the 23-24 NBA season. We start with Atlanta, 3-4 in the week, 29 and 37 on the season. Had key wins against Cleveland and New York. Major losses though, when you look at the scheme of things, Brooklyn and Portland. Dejounte Murray, their best player, 28 points, 5 rebounds, 7.9 assists, 1.7 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 2.9 turnovers. Shot 44.9 from the field, so a little underwhelming in that sense there. Still working hard though, 39.4 from deep, 76.5 from the free throw line. And realistically, Atlanta are only trying to starve off Brooklyn at this stage to be making the play-in tournament. At that point, they'd be making up numbers. We're talking about a team that has the potential to be 10 games below 500 and somehow disrupt a team to make it into the playoffs. That is exactly why I don't like the play-in tournament. But Atlanta, they're a 10th seed at best. They're going to be sitting right where they need to be, and it's going to have some really interesting questions in the postseason. Boston 5-2 on the week, 52 and 14 on the season. Key wins, 2 against Phoenix, and a major loss there when you look at the grand scheme of things to Denver in that period. Porzingis over that time frame in the 7 games, their best player. 24 points, 10.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals and 2 blocks on 2 turnovers. This is the sort of thing we expected Kristaps Porzingis to eventually develop to in New York. Wasn't going to get a chance to in Dallas because of a lack of possession. Certainly in Washington showed a little bit of a spurt here or there, but thriving in that Celtics system. 43.9 from the field, 37.5 from deep, 85.7 from the free throw line. Boston continuing to rack up wins, really looking like they're going to be that 60-win team right now. Impossible pretty much at this point to not be that 60-win team. They are going to keep pushing through, having one of the better regular seasons in certainly recent Celtics history. Easily their best regular season dating back to the 08 championship year. And I think they have a more rounded team in that sense as well. Not as top-heavy, but a more rounded team in that sense. Brooklyn, as I mentioned before, they are 3 games below Atlanta, 3-4 in the week, 26 and 40 on the season. I think their playoff hopes are all but dashed. They had some good wins though against Atlanta, Cleveland, and Philadelphia. Major losses though coming against Memphis, Detroit, and Charlotte. It's all right to beat the teams above you, but you just can't suck against the teams below you. Mikal Bridges, 20.1 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.3 blocks on less than 2 turnovers. But that's subpar shooting from the field, 42.6, just proving a lot to be desired. 44.9 from deep, I can't whinge about that. 77.1 from the free throw line. Brooklyn just seem to have a lot of assets there right now. They're going to need to get a piece in sooner rather than later. However, being the baby brother or the little sister to New York right now when they are in form is certainly not a position to be enviable of. Good to see Mikal Bridges still getting out there, but this team's certainly not what I think many expected. Certainly not what I expected. Thought they could have been around 500 there. Charlotte 2-5 in the week. They are getting up the standings slowly. 17 and 50 still leaves a lot to worry about. Didn't really have any key wins, but 2 of their 5 losses did come against Detroit and Washington. Miles Bridges still standing out as their best player there. Again, not condoning anything that is alleged to have happened off court, but he is playing some okay basketball on the court. 21.6 points, 8.1 rebounds, 3.9 assists, 0.9 steals, 0.4 blocks, less than 2 turnovers, but you can just see this subpar shooting going all the way across the week right now for each leading player. 44.3 from the field, 22.2 from deep, 70.8 from the free throw line. Charlotte really happy to have Brandon Miller really contributing there. They've clearly brought in on him and LaMelo Ball, as I've talked about a fair bit. I just don't know how far that connection is going to lead them. We'll see how it goes. If Miles Bridges hangs around, you get LaMelo back, you get Brandon Miller really chipping in. Maybe this team can take a bit more of a step. But 17-50, I don't see this team being 500 for another 2 to 3 years. Chicago 4-3 on the week. Key wins against Indiana, Sacramento, and Golden State. That really shows they are thereabout on the mark if they are able to keep things on pace. Didn't think that any of their losses were significant. However, if you are a team fighting to be at 500 and you're going to be playing in a play-in tournament, then you could argue that all of your losses are key. But in the grand scheme of things, I thought they had a decent week. DeMar DeRozan, 28.4 points, 5.4 rebounds, 4.9 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks. Efficient scoring from him. 53.4 from the field, 34.5 from deep, 90% from the line, just over 2 turnovers. And again, trying to captain this side and being that veteran leader that this group of Bulls desperately needs. The problem is, though, he is just at that point where you're going to get maybe 3 or 4 weeks out of DeMar DeRozan, but you need your Kobe Whites trying to lead the way again on this team. But they've had some really nice positives here, Chicago. I don't think it's lost on anyone that they played better without Zach LaVine. But again, the guy had an option to be traded to Detroit and then opted for foot surgery. I think that says enough about that. Cleveland, they are still pushing towards that top 4 and wanting to retain that top 4 spot in the East, even though they had a 3-4 week, 42-24 on the season, had key wins there. All of them were key: Boston, Minnesota, and New Orleans. But a sub-500 week isn't good, particularly when you look at the teams they lost to. 2 teams, one particularly going to be a playing team, the other trying to compete to try and manage to snatch 10th. The other guys, really comparative conference for conference. New York, obviously a team holding up their position, and Phoenix holding up his position very similarly over in the West. Darius Garland, 22.1 points, 2.7 rebounds, 7.4 assists over that 2-week period, 1.1 steals, 0.1 blocks, and relatively clean from the field, 47.4 from the field itself, 46% from deep, 80% from the free throw line, and 3.3 turnovers a game. Of course, the major news for Cleveland here is that Donovan Mitchell will not play 65 games. So despite all that hard work, all the massive amounts of effort that he put in, he's not going to play 65 games. He's not going to be eligible for any award or All-NBA selection, which is a bummer. But hopefully that lights a bit of a fuel under his backside, a bit of fire in the belly to really try and push Cleveland to that next level as they go towards the postseason. Detroit 3-4 on the week, 12-54 on the season. Key wins against Brooklyn, Charlotte, and Toronto. So they're showing that they can sort of move up to that next level as a team. No major losses. At the end of the day, when you're one of the worst teams to ever play in the NBA, it's very hard to have a major loss. Major wins certainly more inclined to occur. For Cade Cunningham, 21.3 points, 5 rebounds, 8.4 assists on 0.4 steals and 0.1 blocks a game. Inefficient from the field, 41.5 from deep, 34.8%. I don't want to hear anything about true shooting. That's just terrible floor production. And based on how the game is being officiated over the last few weeks, teams are certainly not getting to the line as they had previously. 3.1 turnovers a game, 31 turnovers a game. My God, the way Detroit has played, it has nearly been a possibility. Certainly not for an individual, though. For Indiana, they sit above 500 by 7 games, 37-30. Indiana 3-3 on the week. Defeated Dallas, Orlando, and OKC, but did have a crucial loss to the Spurs. You cannot be a team losing to the Spurs right now, and Chicago, a team hot on their heels trying to crack 500. Best player over this period, Tyrese Halliburton, and he's certainly in my All-NBA conversation this year. Still remains amongst it as well. 18.2 points, 4.8 rebounds, 11 assists, 0.5 steals, and 0.3 blocks on 3 turnovers. One of the more inefficient weeks he's had on the season here, Halliburton. 46.1 from the field, 22% from deep, 94.7 from the free throw line. It is going to be crucial here for Indiana because they will be battling with Miami, they'll be battling with Philadelphia to try and claim 6th seed. And I can't wait to see how the rest of the season goes. In my next preview, I'm going to do an estimated win-loss on this and see exactly where I think each of these standings will fall. Indiana are in for an interesting fight. Miles Turner, crucial as always, and Pascal Siakam has been as good, if not better than Halliburton when he has been playing for Indiana. Miami 3-4 on the week, 36-30. I mentioned they're going to be in that fight there with the Pacers. Didn't have any key wins, really wasn't anything special. They did lose a game to Dallas, who is going down as one of the worst teams of all time, and Dallas, who are in a very similar position in the opposing conference. Jimmy Butler, their lead player, 21.3 points, 5 rebounds, 5.3 assists 0.1 steals and 0.4 blocks, just over 2 turnovers. Efficient scoring for him, 49.5 from the field, a third of his threes made, and 84.1 from the free throw line. The game has slowed down a little bit. They're allowing a little bit more contact. This is only going to help Miami. However, they're still going to be a team that's going to have to rally from a long way back, and they're going to have to pull off a lot of miracles, because you can just see Milwaukee starting to click. You can see Boston starting to click. They've re-established themselves. Clearly, Boston has been number one all season, but Milwaukee really re-establishing themselves as that number 2 option over there in the East. So that's going to be a real pushing it uphill there for the Heat if they are going to try and compete, knowing that they're going to be fighting, 6th, 7th, 8th seed with Philadelphia right now. I would not want to be running into Miami. I would not want to be running into Philadelphia with the way this one's being played. If they are the 7th, 8th seed, makes for a much more interesting first round matchup. I would love to see Milwaukee taking on Miami or Philadelphia, Boston taking on Miami or Philadelphia, especially when you consider the factor of Joel Embiid. But for Miami, I just think the slight adjustment in this game right now will help them. The final month of the season will determine exactly where they're going to sit. Milwaukee 3-3 on the week. Crucial wins against the Clippers. Major loss against Sacramento, and a major win twice against the Clippers. They're 43-24 on the season. Lillard played in every game. 25.2 points, 4.2 rebounds, 8 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.5 blocks and 1.8 turnovers. 45.4 from the field, 40% from deep, and the league leader in free throw percentage, going 93.8 from the line. Milwaukee just need to turn the Jets on at the right time. This is something I spoke about earlier in the year, and there certainly was concern through the middle part of it and heading towards the All-Star break. But this team was always going to need time to gel. You can't add someone of Damian Lillard's stature, coming off a 10-year run as the leader of a team, and expect him to just jump in and play second fiddle, vice versa. You can't necessarily expect Giannis, who, over the last 5 years, 5-6 years, established himself as one of the 30 best players the league's ever seen, to then automatically reshuffle the deck, so to speak. You've got to know how to deal the cards. You've got to know how to play, essentially know how to hold them, know when to fold them. And that's exactly what they're starting to do now. They've built some chemistry, they've built some strategy, they're trying to develop something under Doc Rivers. They've got a lot of teammates, such as a Porter, such as a Lopez, who have previously played, such as Middleton, who have played in those crucial games. So they're going to continue to grow and continue to develop, and I think they're going to re-establish themselves as number 2. And, really sort of open it up for that conference final battle with Boston. New York 4-2 on the week, their best week in quite a month or so, nearly 6 weeks almost there. 39-27, really establishing themselves top 4, top 5 there, along with the team I'm about to speak of next. Key wins there against Cleveland, Orlando and Philadelphia, but they did lose a bump-out game to Philadelphia, so a bit of a 1-1 matchup there. And also lost a game to Atlanta they wouldn't be happy with. Josh Hart, though, a guy who's stepping up and showing name and nature. 13.7 points, 13.2 rebounds, 5.7 assists on the week, 1.5 steals, 0.8 blocks, 45.2 from the field, 33.3 from deep, 71.4 from the free throw line. Josh Hart is just your typical New York Knicks player. He's determined, he's gritty, he's hard-nosed, he wants to win, he wants to compete, and he's going to do it by any means necessary. Do you need Josh Hart to get 20 points? Josh Hart's going to get 20 points. What's that? You need him to get a hard-nosed double-double on the boards? He'll get on the boards. You need him to facilitate? He'll facilitate. There's a lot of things to like about Josh Hart. I've spoken to Knicks fans, and that's one thing they like too. A few of them are very hesitant, as they seem to find jumping on the bandwagon tends to cause some issues with personnel and roster matchups. To reassure them there, these people aren't going to get traded until at least the off-season or next year if you do so. But a really nice run here for Josh Hart, really supportive, particularly when you look at the fact that Julius Randle is probably going to end up missing half the season almost. So to have that level of support has been sensational by him. But they're going to be competing and pushing uphill against the Orlando Magic. 5-2 on the week. They're now 39-28 the season. Key losses to Indiana and New York, but with a team that's flying like this, getting all nice wins there. I wouldn't call them key wins, but they were nice wins. Banchero, their best player, 22.3 points, 6.4 rebounds, 6 assists, 0.7 steals and blocks a game. 4 turnovers, not ideal, but we're talking about a guy who's really making that All-NBA run. For me, he would be an All-NBA member. He's got to be in the MVP conversation. We're talking about a guy who's leading his team to wins, who's producing, who's got them in playoff contention. Orlando, as I mentioned, were 5-20 after 25 games last year, and they've been above 500 since. No one really made word of it, and they've taken that step this year. Banchero, a big reason. The fact we're going to see Orlando in a first round matchup, and we might see it against Cleveland, is going to be really exciting there. The fact they might sneak to a 5th seed, and you could see them playing in New York. You could see them really trying to compete there. That would be really interesting stuff. Banchero leading the way. I like where Orlando sits, and they've got another 2 years until they are genuinely the real deal. And by then, you're going to have 4 full seasons of Banchero leading this team, developed as to a genuine NBA player. It is going to be some scary stuff there for the Magic. Philadelphia, they're 2-5. They've slumped to 36-30, and of course, there is no doubt, had Embiid been on this team, they are a different squad. Defeated Dallas, New York, all their losses major at this point, but Kelly Oubre, their best player, consistently trying to step up and help out where he can. 20.3 points, 6 rebounds, 2.1 assists, 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks. But it's that inefficiency that just screams the difference on this team. 39.8 from the field, 26.3 from deep, 73.9 from the free throw line. Philadelphia, they're going to be a really interesting team because I think they're going to get stuck in that playing section just with how form is playing out. At the same time, though, I would not want to see this team get 2 weeks of Joel Embiid under their belt, get a couple of playing tuning games, and see whether Embiid can try and break that hoodoo, whether Maxey can step up, whether Harris can continue to be a third wheel. What does Paul Reed do with support there? Your likes of your Kelly Oubre, again, as mentioned. This could be a really, really interesting low seed team who, if you are Milwaukee, if you are Cleveland, and if you are Boston, do not sleep on that, because that could be your first round option, and you could have Joel Embiid back healthy. His performance would ultimately determine how that series went. Toronto 1-6, the worst team in the Eastern Conference over the 2-week period, 23-44. Key win against Charlotte. They did lose to Portland and Detroit along the way. Kelly Olynyk having signed an extension there. 13.6 points, 5.9 rebounds, 4.7 assists, or 1.6 steals and 1.1 blocks. Their best player over that period. But it really doesn't say much when you only have one win and it's against Charlotte. This is a team that certainly could have overperformed, but has certainly underwhelmed this year. They had a few pieces to the jigsaw. They've now tried to space things out, really tried to loosen it up. Again, Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, those guys there are going to be the ones that really, RJ Barrett, that are going to have to carry this team moving forward. We'll see exactly what they look like next year when Scotty Barnes has taken another step. Again, voted in as an all-star this year. He's trying to make and take strides in his game. Toronto right now, it's about preservation. It's about getting key minutes into developing players and seeing how the end of the year can pan out and try and build something for next season. Finally, over to Washington, the worst team in the NBA, 2-4 on the week. Key wins against Miami and Charlotte. They still lost out to Memphis. Best player for the team, Kyle Kuzma, and he had an okay week, 25.8 points, 6.2 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 0.8 steals and blocks, just a tad under 3 turnovers. 49.5 from the field, 25.8 from deep, 80% from the free throw line. Best player on the week, totally on the Eastern Conference side for me, Banchero, just with the way he's taking that step, the way he is leading that team. To me, no question about it, he is the unsung hero. He is the guy that is just not being really favoured by anyone. He ticks all the boxes of what everyone wants as a player. The only problem is the media doesn't care because he's playing in a low market. Looking at the top 10 in the East to the 15th, really, really interesting stuff. You've got Boston at number 1, that's as clear as day. The Bucks at number 2, the Cavs at number 3, and the Knicks at number 4. So all of a sudden you have a really interesting playoff scenario here, where you likely see all of a sudden your top 4 seeds, where New York take on Orlando, Pacers take on Cleveland, the Bucks take on the Heat, and the Sixers take on the Celtics in the first round. I don't think if the Bulls get in or the Hawks get in that it's going to be of any relevance whatsoever. When you really want to look at the difference, we're talking about the Sixers there, 6 games above 500. The Bulls are 3 games below 500. So there's a 9-game difference between potentially the team that upsets and sneaks in to the into the playoffs. This is why the play-in tournament is irrelevant. I would really like to see how Orlando match up between the Knicks and the Cavaliers. I don't know why I thought of Vancouver then. Must have been my workmate. We were talking about hockey earlier this week. The Pacers taking on the Cavaliers. That's a really interesting matchup. Halliburton and Siakam would have a lot on their hands, taking on a Garland, taking on a Mobley, taking on a Mitchell. That'd be a really fun series. Bucks and Heat, that'd be grit and grind. Sixers and Celtics, particularly with an Embiid. I mean, you can't tell me you really need to add the Bulls and the Hawks to the mix there. when you start talking about the Eastern Conference. Over to the West, we go to Dallas. 4-3 on the week, 38-29 on the season. Very key wins against Miami and Golden State, but really crucial losses against Indiana, Philadelphia and OKC. For a lot of these teams, we're not talking about in the sense of where their seedings are, although it does occasionally have an impact. We're talking about how do you measure up in the playoffs, how do you measure up in cross-conference competition. You know, if you're playing a team that's very similar and getting beat, where do you really stack up in your own conference? Kyrie Irving, their best player, and we're not going to talk about that particular shot. That'll be for my next wrap. Kyrie Irving, 24 points, 4.9 rebounds, 5.6 assists, 1 steal, 0.4 blocks, less than 3 turnovers. Really efficient splits there for a smaller guy. 48% from the field, 37% from deep, and 86.8 from the free throw line. Kyrie, he's been a perennial bucket getter since he walked in the league. He's been a 50-40-90 guy. He's been a crucial cog in some really successful teams and championship teams. Continues to get disrespected. Now, to be fair, he does put a little bit on himself. I don't think anyone's going to deny that. If you're going to judge from a pure basketball on-floor standpoint, it's very hard to sit there and not agree that Kyrie Irving, one of the better individual players and certainly one-on-one and impact guys that the league has had over the last decade there. Dallas are going to want to really utilise him. Of course, there's talk about Luka in the conversation around MVP. At the end of the day, the key cog to their success right now is Kyrie Irving. If they can keep him on the path, they will be a completely different team. Denver 6-1. They are just making a hell of a run right now, and they are trying to establish themselves as numero uno and the team to beat not only in the West but certainly across the league. 6-1 on the week, 47-20 on the year. Defeated Boston, and that's crucial because that's a major finals potential right there. And they just proved to have every answer and asked questions that Boston hadn't done their research on. It's as simple as that. Jokic over this period, 28 points, 11.7 rebounds, 7.7 assists, 1.5 steals and a block a game. 3 turnovers is high, but I mean, look at these splits. 61.2 from the field, 38.9 from deep, 91.2 from the free throw line. This is ridiculous. And there's a reason that Jokic is probably going to be getting a third Michael Jordan trophy this year. There's a reason he might get a second Bill Russell trophy this year. And then all of a sudden you're looking at a guy who sits as one of only 8 guys to be the man on 3 championship teams with 2 MVP awards. Illustrious company. Then you're starting to really knock on some doors and build some houses. Golden State 2-4 on the week, 34-31 on the season over that period there. So a 6-game difference in comparison to someone like Chicago. Defeated Milwaukee, but again lost out to Chicago, who's relatively comparative there from a play-in standpoint. Lost to the Spurs, which is not good, and lost to Dallas, a team that would have to be competing with in the play-in tournament sooner rather than later. Jonathan Kuminga has been an absolute revelation since he called Steve Kerr out on a minutes restriction and wanting to be involved more. 20 points, 4.7 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 steal and 0.7 blocks on 2.3 turnovers. One guy who has a genuine case as the most improved player in the NBA this year. 50% from the field, 46.2 from deep, 87.5 from the free throw line. He is going to be crucial if Golden State are going to make any sort of impact heading into the postseason, if they're even going to get out of the play-in tournament. He needs to continue to position himself to be that second, third cog, because right now he is as vital as Klay Thompson is off the bench. He's as vital as Draymond Green trying to play some elite level defense again. He's as crucial as Andrew Wiggins really making a contribution. That's the level. Kevon Looney there on the boards as well. That's the level that Kuminga is playing at right now. He's one of their 3 best players. And he has a case as the most improved player in the league this year. He's had a really nice run. He's going to get a nice little contract out of it, you would think. And that'd be a guy that Steph Curry would happily be going over the top with and being in the trenches with right now. Jonathan Kuminga, a really nice run since he called Steve Kerr out. Houston, surprisingly, after losing Alfred Şengün to a suspected broken ankle, and he's definitely going to be out for the rest of the year, and I mean, you would have to suspect they will be rehabbing him to try and get him at least November next year. 6-1, and they've bounced back to 4 games below 500 and are trying to really push once again to be in that play-in tournament. Really crucial wins. Didn't see any negatives in their losses. Van Vliet, a really nice run there, and he had a genuine case for my player of the week. That's how well he played over there in the West. 21.1 points, 4 rebounds, 9.1 assists, 2 steals, 0.3 blocks on 2.1 turnovers, 49.5 from the field, 48.2 from deep and 90% from the free throw line. The key for Houston right now, you've established a number 1 guy. You've established a really good sidekick. You've established a really good core of leaders. You've clearly shown this is a team that can grow. Now's the time to try and put a little bit of that work in when the key piece of the puzzle is out. Because Houston very well could have folded, and I don't think anyone would have cared if they had faltered at that particular stage. But right now, they're really working hard. They're really pushing well. 6-1 over their last 7. Nothing to bat your eyelid there. If you're a team that's trying to make the playoffs or get out of the playing tournament or even get into the playing tournament, you are not wanting to run into the Rockets. That is just the kind of level they're playing at. It's what they're producing. Went on a real slump there where they went 5 or 6 games below 500 in the bubble burst. All of a sudden, they're 4 games below, but they've managed to fight their way right back into the contest, essentially. And they're going to make things really interesting for teams trying to fight for playoff position and certainly playing tournament contention. The Clippers 4-4 on the week, 42-24 on the year. Had a nice win against Minnesota, but couldn't afford to really drop some of those games. A team that was potentially fighting for the number 1 seed in the West. Paul George still having a nice little run there. 23.3 points, 4.9 rebounds, 4.1 assists, 1.3 steals and 1 block a game on the week. Less than 3 turnovers, 51.9 from the field, 45.6 from deep, 80.6 from the free throw line. Ultimately there for Paul George, the big issue is that he's had a really good season. It's that Kawhi has just had a better season and that James Harden's been really pinch hitting hard for them. Other than that, Paul George had a really nice run. Clippers have had a really nice run. I just wonder whether they're going to have a little bit of management for some of these long-term prospects that have been injured or have had a history of injuries as they go into the postseason. Now, they may very well not. It may be a factor that, we've been able to bide our time really, really well in the regular season. But something just tells me if you're going to be going up against the energy of an Oklahoma City, the energy of Minnesota, the depth of a Denver, then you are going to have to be rested and ready, and that you're more than likely going to have to do that towards the back end of the season. But they also understand that they've got players that are in contention for awards, contention to display themselves as some of the best in the league, and they will at least see those individuals at 65 games, you would suspect. The Lakers, they went 500 as well, but they're in a little bit more of a stickier predicament. All of their wins were key. Some of their games, most of their games they couldn't afford to draw at 500. They're 4 games above, but they are still fighting off Golden State in the play-in tournament and risking the idea that you could very well, I don't know how these settings are going to fall, there's a realistic chance that you run into Sacramento, Dallas or Phoenix as a matchup along with Golden State in the play-in tournament. AD and that have got a lot of minutes on them this year. LeBron's got a lot of minutes on him this year. This is a team that we know needs to be rested to perform perfectly in the postseason. It's the only success they've ever had in the postseason. There's a lot of pressure on them to try and perform and try and be ready. Anthony Davis, their best player in the week, 21 points, 13.7 rebounds, 3.7 assists, 1.5 steals, 2.3 blocks on less than 2 turnovers, 47.6 from the field, 25% from deep, 81.4 from the free throw line. And the question as well for Anthony Davis, how's he going to compete with some of these generational bigs when he himself is a generational big? Anthony Davis isn't small, he's just not as big as Sabonis, Embiid and Jokic, and he can't contain it. And even someone like a Nurkic caused issues for him. Big bodies, who can do all 3 pillars on offense. Yep, he is great defensively, Davis, but he's better as a help than a one-on-one, particularly when he's going up against a much bigger body. So the Lakers will a little bit of work to do. Memphis 3-4, and I think they'll be happy with that there, where they can. 23-44 on the season. Again, it's crazy to think when you look at everything star power-wise, injury-wise, circumstance-wise, that Memphis has had as good of a year at Toronto, and they started out the year with Pascal Siakam, with Dennis Schroeder, with Scotty Barnes, with OG Anunoby. What are we working with here? In comparison to Memphis, who lost Steven Adams before a tip-off, haven't really seen much of Desmond Bain, haven't seen much of Brandon Clark, saw Ja Morant for a quick flash in the pan, bang, he was gone. I don't know whether that was really the reference to make, but anyway, here we are. There's not much going on for Memphis, other than Jaren Jackson Jr. Marcus Smart had an injury as well. Jake LaRavia, I should say, 12.4 points, 5.4 rebounds, 1.6 assists, or 1.7 steals and 0.6 blocks on the week, but he barely made a third of all shots taken, let alone 83.8 from the free throw line. I don't know, Memphis in a comparatively decent position. When you look at everything that is to come back in for both teams, I'd be taking Memphis over Toronto, particularly when you look at how Memphis performed last year. Now I know Steven Adams has been traded, and I know that he's at Houston, I know Oladipo's an expiring contract. It does make it interesting though, because when you consider everything that's got to come back into this team and the way this team plays, I mean, they're certainly a top 6 team when healthy. And when you look at the depth in the West, it just starts to squeeze teams again and again. These older teams like your Warriors and the Lakers start squeezing a little bit more. Houston starts developing, you know. Really interesting times, and I think Memphis are going to be a real spanner in the works next year for a lot of teams there in the West. Minnesota 3-3, 45-21, still flirting top of the table. Defeated the Clippers, but also lost out to them and had a major malfunction at the junction there against Cleveland, a really comparative team over in the East. Anthony Edwards just continuing to be All-NBA, continuing to be one of the 10 best players in the league this year. 27.5 points, 5.8 rebounds, 4.2 assists, 1.7 steals and 0.8 blocks on 2.5 turnovers. Inefficient at 43.8%, 25% from deep, 77.8 from the free throw line. But if there is one thing that that Edwards isn't doing, he's not settling for jumpers. He's starting to get to the rim. He's starting to attack. Now, they're not getting as many calls as previously, but he's really understanding that, hey, I'm not getting points here. I'm going to have to do something about it. And attacking the rim is exactly what he's got to do. And we know how athletic he can do it. We know how well he contends. Insane stuff there. Karl Anthony Towns out for a month and not expecting him back until the start or the early part of the playoffs. That throws a real spanner in the works, but it is a good opportunity for Naz Reid to step up. It's a good opportunity there for Gobert to solidify himself on the team, really establish themselves that, hey, we might have lost our second key player, but we are still genuinely a contender, and we are an excitement machine. Karl Anthony Towns' injuries is a big, always concerning, particularly when it's a leg injury. So speedy recovery for him, particularly for Minnesota. New Orleans 4-1 over their 5 games, 40-26. Defeated the Clippers, and Philadelphia did lose out to Cleveland. Again, for a lot of these Western Conference teams, we're talking about crucial losses. It's changing your position between first, second and third. Sometimes it's saying, are you going to be in the playoffs or are you going to be in a play-in tournament? There's a lot going on in the West right now. New Orleans, as I mentioned, 4-1, 40-26. Defeated the Clippers and Philadelphia, lost out to Cleveland. Zion Williamson has been major for them. 26.6 points, 8.4 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.4 steals and 1.6 blocks. It's less than 2 turnovers a game, but we're talking 63% from the field. We're talking Charles Barkley from the field. That Zion but he's now running the point. He's starting to distribute. He's starting to play on the perimeter. He's adding another dynamic, which is still allowing a lot of effort and a lot of work to be put in, not only by himself with the ball in hand, but you're talking Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum getting some real relief in that department. Not necessarily having the ball in hand, so making the defense accountable. You're talking about a Jonas Valanciunas still being a contributor and a bigger body as well. I really like this mix for New Orleans. They could very well be a team that tries to crack top 4 as well. But again, just a bad week right now for New Orleans. Takes them from trying to contend in the top 4 to trying to avoid the play-in. That's the apples and oranges situation right now for New Orleans. For OKC, they're continuing to tick along as well towards the very top of the conference. 5-2, 46-20 on the week. Key win against Phoenix, lost out to Indiana. But the guy who I feel has been the MVP of the league is still ticking along. Gilgeous-Alexander, 30.4 points, 6.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 1.9 steals and 1.3 blocks, less than 3 turnovers, and efficient shooting splits as well. 51.7 from the field, 84.5 from the free throw line, 28.6 from 3. OKC are just that team. Right now they are that team, and they are young, they are exciting, they are fresh. The question doesn't become an offensive challenge. We know they've got bucket getters, we know they've got people they can score. The question is defensively. Are they good enough to defend the other hard-hitting teams in the Western Conference to make an NBA Finals? Right now, I don't know if that's the case. I don't think that it's not possible. It just doesn't stand out to me. And this is where the nitpicking really starts to come in. When you're really trying to find a contender, when you're really trying to find a team, a contender, I don't know, where am I going to sail away in OKC on that one? I'm not real sure. But you've got to nitpick. You've got to just find the small little things. And I don't think you've got a question about your rookie, your young team, your leadership there, your number one star, your reserves. There's no question surrounding those guys. I don't think there ever has been surrounding those guys. The real question now is just going to be simply a matter of, can they get it done and when can they get it done? because that is absolutely the next piece right now that is dependent for the OKC Thunder. A really nice week. Gilgeous-Alexander still competing. Phoenix 4-4 on the week, 39-28. Another team that is going to be varying between, hey, look, we're a top 4 team, to, geez, we're trying to starve off the play-in tournament. Defeated Denver and Cleveland, but they did have 2 key losses to Boston and a loss to OKC. So when you look at everyone they've played, what's that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of at least their 8 games are contending against top 3, top 4 contenders in their respective conferences. Really trying to work through that one there. Kevin Durant, a really nice week. 29.4 points, 6.6 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 0.6 steals, 0.9 blocks on 4 turnovers. 51.4 from deep, 51.4 from the field, 40% from deep, and 80.9 from the free throw line. Durant's just continuing to rack up offensive numbers. Kevin Durant's going to be another All-NBA selection for me this year. He just gets it done. He's just efficient, and you're talking about doing that. He does get a lot of relief, as we know, with Bradley Beal, with Devin Booker, but Nurkic has been really key in the chain of the offense so far for Phoenix. They've really started to utilise the fact that, hey, we can play a big man in the pivot, high or low, and he can facilitate, and we can score with or without the basketball. That's where Phoenix's bread and butter is right now. That's where they're developing. That's where they're really starting to show how much of a challenger that they are. Portland 19-47 on the year, 3-5 on the week. Some nice key wins there. All their wins proving to be crucial so far. Delano Banton, 16.5 points, 4.9 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.4 blocks on 2 turnovers. But subpar shooting, 39.8 from the field. Can't do much about that. Dupe Reith has been a really nice standout rookie for them. Scoot Henderson, a nice rookie season as well. So they've got some young guys they can continue to build around. DeAndre Ayton started to find his game as well. Anthony Simons, Malcolm Brogdon, a nice little piece there. And you'd think if Robert Williams was back in, it makes it a different team. It just seems to be, as I said, there are these misfits, but just somewhere along the line, you just feel they can combine and do something. You just don't know what it's going to be and when it's going to happen. But for Portland, they've got a few nooks and crannies to iron out for sure. If they win 25 games on the season, I think that'd be a miracle at this stage. Sacramento, 4-2 on the week, 38-27. Another team that's bouncing between top 6 and a play-in tournament side. Defeated Milwaukee, lost out to Houston. Sabonis with another massive week. 21.5 points, 17.2 rebounds, 8.5 assists, 1.8 steals and 0.7 blocks. 3.8 turnovers is high, but so is 62.8 from the field, so is 83.3 from the free throw line, 25% from deep, could be better. The question is, what do people want more out of Sabonis? Leads the league in double-doubles. Puts up triple-doubles. Clearly the reason the team is successful is when he leads the offense. I mean, he's got All-NBA team written all over me this year. Really simple stuff. He's going to be in my MVP conversation, I have no doubt, as the year continues on as well. And he's proven to be the key cog in the wheel there for Sacramento, despite the fact that they are currently wanting to get rid of one of their prospective drivers. Or at least he hasn't signed on with the team. So I don't know, for Sacramento, they're going to have to try and utilise something with Sabonis as the playoffs come into swing. They need to utilise where he's best for his pass game. They know he's going to score efficiently, and they know he's one of the best rebounders in the league. You need to then have Malik Monk, you need to have Keegan Murray, and you need to have De'Aaron Fox working off him in synergy if they are going to get any respect, if they are going to cause any form of upset. Realistically, when you look at Sacramento, they're likely going to be playing the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves and the Thunder at some point. I don't know if they're going to have enough to compete all the way through with them, whether it's for a first round, whether it's into a second round, whether it's a miracle conference finals run. But there clearly are some pieces there for Sacramento, and it's something they need to work on. Second last team here, the Spurs, 2-5 on the week, 14-53 on the year. So only about 5 games worse than Portland. Key wins, not many bad losses. Sohan continues to be the man that wants to try and steal the spotlight off of Victor Wembanyama. 15 points, 7.1 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 0.6 steals, 0.1 blocks. Had an efficient night, an efficient week from the field at 48.8%, 82.4 from the free throw line, less than 30%. Leaves a little to be desired out deep. But ultimately here for the Spurs, we're talking about a team that has generational talent, a generational player, a guy that can seriously kick some backside, but a guy that can seriously get the job done in Wembanyama. He's going to cruise in for Rookie of the Year. He's going to poll very highly all defensive and all NBA and all Rookie and Defensive Player of the Year and Rookie of the Year. He is that level of talent, and it's just amazing to think what things would look like in that conversation at 500. Because if Spurs hit a winning record at any point in Wembanyama's 30, 15, 5 and 5 blocks a game, 3 letters come to mind there. And if he does that for an extended period, 4 letters potentially start entering the equation. That should give you an idea with the Spurs. Finally for Utah, they've really started to slump, and they've almost started to hit a Brooklyn-esque level on the way they are playing. 2-4 on the week. We're talking 29-37. I mean, we're talking about a team that's at, Atlanta Hawks level. We're talking a team that's Brooklyn Nets level, who, heading towards the All-Star break, looked like they were going to start making a run and start pushing, and they just weren't able to do it. All of their wins were key. They had a loss to Chicago, and again, that about sums up the measurement for the Jazz there. 21.5 points, 3.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists for Colin Sexton, 0.8 steals, 0.2 blocks, less than 2 turnovers, almost 50-40-90 splits. But for the Jazz, they are on the outside looking in. Everyone is above 500 right now in the West, and unless you are going to be above 500, you're not even going to be in the play-in tournament. So I think for Utah, unless you're going to get on a bicycle and ride, they are certainly seated and trying to work through the Alps in the snow without any assistance from Lance Armstrong and his medical team. Player of the week in the West, Nikola Jokic, 6-1 record, just dominating. And the big thing for me as well, yes, there's Van Vliet, who's had a really nice run with the Houston team that's trying to re-establish towards 500, make a real gamble at the play-in tournament. But we're talking about a guy here in Jokic who's, number one, reminded everyone why he's the best player in the NBA. Number two, established themselves again genuinely as the MVP of the league. And number three, just shown how clutch he is, how clutch Denver is, and the fact that when the big moments come, they struggle to be beaten. If you've got a bunch of guys that don't get beaten in the big moments, that play 5-man basketball, that get it done offensively and defensively, that deliver in the crunch time, and you're the leader of that team, very, very hard for me to go past you for that selection there. Finally, top 10 in the West to wrap up the video here, and just how everything has been tracking to the 15th. Nuggets at number 1, Thunder at number 2, Timberwolves at number 3. Throw a blanket over them with the Clippers at number 4. Here's where the interesting side of things is. The Pelicans and the Kings currently sit at 5 and 6, with the Suns 7th and 8th is the Mavericks. Lakers 9 and 10 are the Warriors. So all of a sudden, when you look at the play-in tournament right now everyone's above 500. I still don't like the idea. If it's clear cut, you've already got deciders, use it. If you don't, throw them out. Now use your play-in tournament. So don't use your division, don't use your head-to-head, nothing. Throw it out and just say, simple. Top 6, automatic qualifiers. 7 to 10, play-in tournament. That's it. Don't worry about splitting anything else. Go for and against. I don't care how you really want to work it from there. That's totally up to you. But if we were to look at the playoffs right now, you would see the Suns and the Mavericks battling it out. Winner gets the 7th seed. Lakers and Warriors battling it out. Winner goes through to take on what? The Mavericks? And then from there you would potentially see one of them play the Nuggets in the first round. Just on what I'm showing you on the screen. I don't need to see Denver take on the Lakers or the Warriors in place of the Mavericks, because I know what's going to happen. I don't need to see that. On the other side of it, you've got someone like the Pelicans and the Kings, who if they slip, they're back in that position at the Suns and the Mavericks. Makes the play-in tournament more interesting, but your overall look isn't that great. I mean, your first round matchups would be Denver versus Dallas, and Denver would just kill them. You've got OKC and the Suns. That becomes a real attrition of, you've got young, talented guys versus senior guys who are now playing off ball with a really pinch post effort. With Nurkic, you'd have the Timberwolves and the Kings, which becomes very interesting with the Gobert-Sabonis matchup, with the Edwards-Fox matchup. Guys like Naz Reid having to deal with Keegan Murray, Malik Monk and Mike Conley, becomes a bit more of an interesting series. Clippers and Pelicans, that's a hell of a ball club matchup there as well. But nothing excites me about the potential of Denver having to take on Dallas, Los Angeles, or the Warriors. Why? This is a team that could get away with 5 dribbles in a transition. This is a team that gets away with 1 dribble in a transition offense, let alone a team that wouldn't need to see the ball touch the ground more than 5 times, let alone through 5 sets of hands to be able to beat either side. That's how the West sits right now. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been me. That is my wrap to the 15th of March 2024 for the 23-24 NBA season. We have 4 weeks left. It is going to be a barn burner in the West, heading out to playoff time in the East. It's going to be a little more interesting for your top seeds, but I certainly don't see much more happening beyond the play-in tournament, and certainly I don't think seedings are as much of an issue. That big watch there is Cleveland right through to Philadelphia. How do things pan out? How do things match up? Anyway, guys, that's been me. I'm out.